The princess defied the galaxy, for the human she chose. Princess Lyra stood at the balcony of the royal palace, her gaze stretching over the city and beyond, to the glittering stars of the empire she was destined to serve. For centuries, the Zellaran royal family had ruled with precision and discipline, bound by centuries of laws and traditions. Alliances were made carefully, marriages arranged to strengthen power, and no ruler had ever dared to defy the rules. Until now. Lyra's heart beat faster than usual, and it wasn't from the height of the balcony or the soft wind brushing her face. She had made a decision, a choice that would shock the galaxy. She had chosen a human, Jackson Carter, as her companion. The very thought of it sent whispers of excitement and fear racing through her mind. Humans were considered simple, unpredictable, and fragile compared to Zellara's advanced races. They were outsiders, a species that many dismissed as incapable of understanding the complexities of the galactic empire. Yet Lyra had seen something in Jackson that no alien counselor could comprehend: courage, ingenuity, and an unshakable sense of morality. The announcement was to be made today, during the grand assembly at the Emperor's court. Dressed in a gown of soft silver that shimmered like starlight, Lyra descended the grand staircase, each step echoing in the marble hall. Courtiers and officials whispered as she passed, some in admiration, some in disbelief. The council would not be pleased. They had already prepared a speech warning her of the consequences, but Lyra had rehearsed her own words, ready to face the storm. Jackson stood beside her, straight-backed and calm, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of nervousness. Unlike the alien nobles who strutted with haughty airs, he carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that came from relying on one's mind and instincts rather than status or strength. Humans were underestimated, often ignored, yet they had a unique way of thinking that could outmatch even the most rigidly trained alien intellects. Lyra had witnessed this firsthand during the weeks he had spent at the palace as part of the trade delegation. The Emperor's court was vast, filled with hundreds of beings from across the galaxy. Tall, multi-limbed officials from the Orcs cluster leaned forward, whispering in low hisses. Feathered envoys from Ariona adjusted their plumage nervously, and holographic displays shimmered overhead, projecting the history of the Zellaran Empire and the power of its rulers. At the center of it all, Emperor Valen sat on his throne, his eyes sharp and unyielding. "Princess Lyra," the Emperor began, his voice echoing across the chamber, "you have requested an audience. Speak." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Father, I have made a choice that may surprise this council, but it is mine to make. I choose Jackson Carter, a human, as my partner. I ask for your blessing." A stunned silence filled the room. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Humans? As a royal consort? The very idea seemed impossible. Some envoys shook their heads, others stared in disbelief. Jackson's hand brushed against Lyra's, a silent reassurance. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Do you understand the gravity of this decision, Lyra? Humans are not part of our political framework. They are unpredictable, untested, and frankly unworthy of royal consideration." Lyra lifted her chin. "I understand, but I also see what humans can offer. Their courage, their creativity, their ability to adapt. Jackson has shown me that humans are capable of greatness. They may not follow our rules, but they inspire us to rise above our own limitations." The council erupted. Shouts and accusations filled the air, voices overlapping in anger and disbelief. One elder counselor, a being of shifting light named Orales, floated forward. "Princess, do you realize the consequences? This choice could fracture the empire. You risk exile, dishonor, even civil unrest." Lyra held her ground, her eyes meeting each of the counselors in turn. "I understand the risks," she said, "but I will not let fear dictate my life or the life of someone I respect and care for. If the galaxy cannot see the value in humanity, then perhaps it is time we change the galaxy." Jackson stepped forward, surprising the assembly. His voice was calm but firm. "I am no ruler. I am a human, yes, but humans are survivors, thinkers, and doers. We solve problems that others cannot. I will not ask for power, but I will stand beside Lyra and prove that humans are worthy of respect, not as rulers, but as allies, friends, and equals." A murmur of awe ran through parts of the court. Even some counselors, though reluctant, could not deny the force of truth in his words. Humans may be underestimated, but they had survived harsh planets, hostile environments, and countless conflicts with ingenuity alone. That was something Zelara could not ignore. The Emperor leaned back, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he spoke again. "You have made your choice. Know this, Princess, the path you have chosen is dangerous. The Council may attempt to block it. You may lose everything. Yet if you are determined, I will not stop you, but the galaxy will watch. Every move you make will be scrutinized." Lyra nodded, feeling both the weight of responsibility and the exhilaration of freedom. She had expected resistance, but hearing it confirmed, she felt ready. The journey would be perilous, but it was hers to take. The next days were filled with preparation. Lyra and Jackson met in secret, discussing strategy and learning more about each other's strengths. Humans, Jackson explained, excelled in thinking outside the box. They were resourceful, adaptable, and relentless when driven by purpose. Lyra shared her own knowledge of the Empire, its weaknesses, and its rigid structures. Together, they began to see how they could navigate a system designed to suppress innovation and spontaneity. Word of their alliance spread quickly across the Empire, reaching citizens and officials alike. Many were scandalized, but some were intrigued. Across the galaxy, news networks buzzed with speculation. Would the princess survive her rebellion? Could a human truly stand alongside Zeller and royalty? The questions alone drew attention, and attention meant power, if used wisely. One evening, as they walked along the palace gardens, Lyra looked at the stars with Jackson by her side. The gardens were a sanctuary, filled with exotic flora from dozens of planets glowing softly in the twilight. "Do you ever fear," she asked quietly, "that we are stepping into something too dangerous?" Jackson smiled faintly. "Every day. But humans don't survive by avoiding danger. We survive by finding solutions, by taking risks, and by helping each other. If anyone can face this, it's us." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. In the quiet of the garden, away from the glare of the Empire, she realized something vital. Humans were not weak. They were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability was strength. It was courage in its purest form, and she would follow it no matter the cost. The following morning, the council convened again, this time in full fury. Several high-ranking officials demanded Lyra retract her decision. Orales floated forward once more, his luminous form flickering with agitation. "Princess, the Empire cannot accept this. You risk everything, your crown, your honor, the stability of Zelara itself. Humans cannot be integrated into our systems." Lyra's eyes blazed with determination. "The Empire has thrived for centuries on rules and tradition, but greatness is never born from fear. It is born from courage, innovation, and compassion. I will not deny what I know to be true. Jackson Carter is worthy, and I will not turn away from him or from what humans represent." A silence fell. Even the most conservative counselors could not argue with her conviction. It was dangerous, yes. It was unprecedented. But there was something in Lyra's words that resonated, a reminder that progress often required defiance. The first part of Lyra and Jackson's journey had begun. The galaxy watched, some with anticipation, others with dread. The path ahead would be treacherous. Enemies would rise, and challenges would test their resolve. But for the first time in centuries, the imperial city of Zelara felt a spark of something new. A spark ignited by the courage of a human and the heart of a princess who refused to be bound by expectation. Lyra stood once more on her balcony that night, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. She took Jackson's hand and felt the steady beat of his human heart, a rhythm both ordinary and extraordinary. The universe was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but together they were ready to face it. For the first time, she understood what it truly meant to defy the galaxy, for love, for courage, and for the extraordinary potential of humanity. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the court, whispers began to spread, whispers of a princess who had chosen differently, a human who had earned his place, and a future that could change the galaxy forever. The story was just beginning. The days following the royal announcement were tense. The palace, usually a place of calm and order, buzzed with whispers and secret meetings. Courtiers hurried through marble corridors, some plotting, some pleading, and some simply curious. Princess Lyra moved among them with quiet confidence, yet beneath her composed exterior, her mind raced. Choosing Jackson Carter as her companion had shaken the foundations of the Empire, and the consequences were beginning to unfold. Jackson, for his part, adapted quickly. Humans had a remarkable way of thriving in new and unexpected situations, and he was no exception. He spent hours learning about Zelara's politics, its systems, and the complex web of alliances that connected every corner of the galaxy. Yet, while the other diplomats relied on rigid protocols, Jackson relied on something more subtle, understanding people, predicting their motives, and thinking creatively. Humans see patterns differently, Lyra had remarked during one of their late-night discussions. You notice what others miss, you question assumptions, that's why I trust you. Jackson smiled, though it was tinged with fatigue. And humans get things wrong sometimes, but when we do, we learn fast, that's how we survive. Lyra believed him, she had already seen it. During a recent negotiation between rival alien factions, Jackson had found a solution that no Zelleran strategist had imagined. Using nothing but logic and empathy, he bridged a divide that could have led to conflict. That same skill, Lyra knew, would become vital as the council grew more hostile to her choice. The council had indeed grown restless. A group of high-ranking officials demanded a private audience with the princess, intending to sway her or intimidate her into abandoning Jackson. Lyra agreed to meet them in the smaller chamber of the palace, a room lined with polished metal and ancient texts. The air was thick with tension. Orales floated forward, his shimmering form radiating authority. Princess Lyra, the council has deliberated. Your actions risk the stability of Zellara. You must reconsider. Humans are outsiders. They cannot understand our ways. They cannot uphold our laws. Lyra's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with resolve. I do not doubt your knowledge, Orales. But I have seen what humans can do. I have seen them face impossible challenges and survive. I have seen courage, loyalty, and creativity that no tradition can teach. Jackson Carter is human, yes, but he is capable. He is worthy, and I will not deny that truth. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered among themselves, clearly unsettled by her confidence. Others simply stared, uncertain whether to challenge the princess openly. It was rare for anyone in Zellara to speak with such conviction against centuries of precedent. Lyra turned to Jackson, who stood beside her, calm but attentive. You see, father, she said, her tone firm yet respectful, this is not a whim. I have made my choice after careful consideration. I will not abandon it because others fear change. The chamber fell silent. Even Orales, who had spoken with such certainty moments ago, hesitated. For the first time, Lyra sensed doubt creeping into the council's minds. Perhaps they were beginning to see the same truth she had, that humans, underestimated and dismissed, were capable of extraordinary things. After the meeting, Lyra and Jackson retreated to the private halls of the palace. The sunlight poured through tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Lyra leaned against the railing, watching the city below. The council will not give up, she said softly. They will test us, try to find weaknesses, and push us to fail, but I am ready. Are you? Jackson nodded. I am. Humans thrive when challenged. The harder the problem, the more we find ways to solve it. And I've learned from you, Princess. You understand that the galaxy is not just about rules and power, it's about people. Their plans grew more ambitious in the following days. Lyra wanted to show the council that humans were not merely capable, but valuable. They began to organize a series of demonstrations, subtle but effective, highlighting Jackson's human ingenuity and adaptability. First came the logistical challenge of the royal supply lines. The Empire relied on rigid systems for distributing resources across planets, but occasional glitches caused delays and shortages. Jackson proposed improvements, using simple yet clever methods that relied on observation, communication, and resourcefulness. The results were undeniable. Supplies that had previously taken weeks to arrive reached their destinations in days. The citizens noticed the change. The council noticed it too. While some remained skeptical, others whispered privately about the potential of humans if given proper opportunity. Next came a test of diplomacy. A faction from the Outer Rim, long considered unruly and difficult to negotiate with, threatened to break a trade agreement with Zellara. Traditional diplomats had failed repeatedly, their methods too rigid for the faction's unconventional thinking. Jackson, with Lyra by his side, approached the situation differently. He listened first, asked questions, and then proposed solutions that considered both Zelleran rules and the faction's needs. Within hours, the Outer Rim faction agreed to a new arrangement, one that preserved the Empire's interests and satisfied the faction's demands. Lyra watched him with admiration. Humans were not just capable of surviving, they could thrive in situations where others would fail. Jackson's success emboldened her. Perhaps, she thought, the galaxy was ready for a change, even if it had not realized it yet. But not all attention was favorable. Some members of the council, determined to challenge Lyra, began spreading rumors about the human ambassador. They claimed humans were too reckless, too unpredictable, and that Lyra's insistence on defying tradition would bring ruin. Lyra ignored the whispers as best she could, but the tension was growing. The political climate was becoming a storm, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the first lightning struck. Then came the message, a warning delivered in secrecy. One of the palace's most trusted intelligence agents had discovered a plot by a rival faction to sabotage the Empire's core navigation system. If successful, the sabotage would disrupt travel across dozens of planets, endanger thousands of lives, and throw the Empire into chaos. Lyra understood immediately that this was the test she and Jackson had been waiting for. It was more than a challenge. It was an opportunity to prove that humans were capable of extraordinary things. "This is it," she told Jackson as they reviewed the intelligence reports in a quiet chamber. "This is our chance to show the Council that humans are more than worthy of trust, and more than that, we can save lives." Jackson studied the data, his brow furrowed. "It's dangerous. The faction has technology we've never seen before, and the system is complex, but I think we can do it. Humans have solved problems like this before, and with you helping me, Princess, I believe we can succeed." Lyra placed her hand on his. "Then we must act carefully but decisively. The Empire will watch, and we cannot fail." In the days that followed, Lyra and Jackson worked tirelessly. They assembled a small, trusted team, a mix of human engineers and Zellaran strategists willing to think beyond tradition. Together, they studied the sabotage plan, devised countermeasures, and prepared for every contingency. Jackson's approach was unconventional, blending creativity with logic, while Lyra used her understanding of imperial systems and protocols to navigate the bureaucracy that might otherwise hinder their progress. The first test came sooner than expected. A minor sabotage attempt occurred on a nearby supply station. Lyra and Jackson arrived just in time to prevent it, using a combination of quick thinking, precise action, and human ingenuity. The operation was a success, and word of their achievement reached the Council and the citizens alike. Humans could not be dismissed any longer, but the victory was tempered by realization. The main attack on the core navigation system was imminent. The rival faction was powerful, cunning, and ruthless. Lyra knew that the coming days would demand everything they had. She also knew that the Empire would be watching their every move, judging humanity's worth by their performance under pressure. That night, Lyra and Jackson stood on the balcony of the palace again. The city glimmered below, the lights of countless lives moving in orderly rhythm. Lyra looked at Jackson, seeing both determination and calm resolve in his eyes. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. Jackson nodded. "We've prepared as much as we can, and humans, we do not give up. No matter the odds, no matter the danger, we find a way." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then let us prove it. Not just for the Empire, but for everyone who believes that courage and ingenuity can overcome fear and prejudice." As they watched the stars together, the quiet hum of the palace around them, Lyra felt a deep sense of certainty. The coming trials would be hard, perhaps the hardest either of them had ever faced. But she also knew something else. Together, they were stronger than any obstacle, braver than any threat, and capable of changing the course of the galaxy itself. And somewhere in the shadows of the court, the rival factions stirred, unaware that the human they had underestimated was about to become the greatest weapon against their plans. The game was beginning, and the pieces were moving into place. Lyra and Jackson had stepped onto a path from which there was no turning back. The galaxy would watch, the Council would judge, and the fate of countless lives would hang in the balance. But one thing was certain. Humans, underestimated and dismissed, were about to show the universe what courage, ingenuity, and determination could achieve. And the first strike in that test of skill, strategy, and heart was only just beginning. The palace was alive with tension. Every corridor seemed to hum with anticipation, whispers carrying news of the imminent sabotage across the Empire. Princess Lyra moved through the halls with a sense of urgency, her mind focused on the task ahead. The council had grown anxious, their polite warnings replaced with sharp commands, yet they still dared not directly interfere with her plans. She had proven herself capable before, and now the stakes were far higher. Jackson Carter stood by the strategy table in the private planning room, his hands tracing over the holographic projections of the core navigation system. His brow was furrowed, but his expression remained calm. Humans thrived under pressure, and this was a test of both their skills and their courage. The rival factions' plans were sophisticated, designed to strike at the heart of the Empire, disrupting communication and travel across dozens of star systems. If they succeeded, the consequences would be catastrophic. Lyra leaned over the projections, studying the lines and nodes that mapped the Empire's navigation network. "They've covered every direct route," she said. "It won't be easy to reach the central hub unnoticed." Jackson nodded. "Direct approaches are predictable. We need to think like they would, assume they expect us to follow the obvious paths and then do something different. Humans have a way of seeing possibilities others overlook." Lyra smiled faintly. That was one of the many reasons she trusted him. His ability to see the unseen, to find solutions that no one else could, was remarkable. "Then we'll take the unconventional approach," she said. "We'll split the team, create decoys, and strike where they least expect us." The team assembled quickly, consisting of human engineers, Zellaran tacticians, and a few sympathetic council members who had begun to recognize the value of humans. Each person brought a unique skill set, and together, they formed a group capable of facing a challenge that could have overwhelmed a far larger force. Jackson coordinated their positions with precision, while Lyra used her knowledge of the Empire's rules and customs to navigate bureaucracy and secure resources without raising suspicion. The first phase of their plan involved infiltration. Using small, agile ships, they would approach the rival faction's hidden base from multiple angles, creating confusion and dividing the enemy's attention. Jackson had designed the approach using a combination of stealth technology and unconventional tactics inspired by human military history. It was risky, but risk was a part of success. As the fleet moved through the outer rim, Lyra stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the stars. "Do you ever wonder if we're making the right choice?" she asked quietly. Jackson glanced at her. "Every day, but humans never succeed by doubting themselves. We succeed by acting, by learning, by adapting. And I've learned something from you, Princess. Courage isn't just bravery, it's the willingness to act when fear is present." Lyra felt a surge of admiration. Humans were not flawless, but they were resilient. They faced danger head-on, relying on wit, creativity, and determination rather than simply power or status. It was a lesson she would carry with her forever. The infiltration began at dawn. Small craft slipped silently through the asteroid field surrounding the enemy base, sensors and shields working in perfect synchronization. Lyra and Jackson led one team, moving under the cover of the field's shadows, while decoy ships created diversions elsewhere. Every move had been calculated, yet the tension was palpable. One misstep could alert the rival faction and doom the mission. Inside the base, the rival faction had anticipated some form of interference. Security drones patrolled corridors, automated systems scanned for intruders, and traps were laid to catch the unwary. But the human mind excelled in improvisation. Jackson guided his team carefully, using a combination of observation, logic, and intuition to bypass obstacles. At one point, a security drone appeared suddenly, its sensors scanning the corridor. Lyra froze for a heartbeat, then followed Jackson's lead. He whispered, "Move slowly, anticipate its path, and stay in its blind spots." The team mirrored his movements, slipping past the drone as if it were not there. Every step required precision, but humans had an uncanny ability to adapt in real time. Reaching the core navigation hub was only part of the challenge. The faction had encrypted the systems with codes and failsafes designed to prevent unauthorized access. Jackson approached the console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Humans excel when creativity is needed," he muttered. "We think differently, and that's our advantage." Minutes felt like hours as he worked through the layers of security. Lyra watched the countdown timer on the base's systems, aware that failure was not an option. Finally, with a satisfying click, the console accepted the override. The navigation hub was now under their control, but the danger was far from over. The rival faction detected the breach almost immediately. Alarms blared and the corridors lit up with warning signals. Security forces moved quickly, but the human team had already anticipated this. Decoys and diversionary tactics had bought them crucial minutes, and now Lyra and Jackson led a calculated retreat, moving through alternate pathways designed to confuse the enemy. As they navigated the corridors, Lyra marveled at the ingenuity of their human-led strategies. Each move was carefully planned yet flexible enough to allow for improvisation. Humans were not bound by rigid protocols. They adapted, learned, and overcame obstacles with remarkable efficiency. The rival faction, powerful as they were, could not match this combination of creativity and courage. Emerging from the base, the team's ships regrouped in the asteroid field. Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. They had succeeded in securing the navigation hub, preventing the sabotage, and demonstrating that humans were more than capable allies. But there was no time to rest. The rival faction was retreating, likely to regroup and plan another attack. Lyra turned to Jackson. "We've won this battle, but the war isn't over." He nodded, his expression calm but determined. "Humans thrive in challenges, Princess. We learn from every obstacle, we prepare for the next one, and we will face it together." Back in the Empire, news of their success spread quickly. Citizens celebrated, council members debated, and even skeptics began to reconsider their prejudices. Humans were no longer seen as fragile outsiders. They were valued, respected, and most importantly, capable of extraordinary achievements. Yet not everyone welcomed the change. The rival faction's leaders, humiliated by the failure, plotted revenge. They underestimated the human spirit, believing that reliance on creativity and adaptability was a weakness. They did not realize that these qualities had turned what seemed like a desperate gamble into a decisive victory. Lyra and Jackson returned to the palace, exhausted but resolute. The council summoned them immediately, eager to understand how the sabotage had been prevented. Lyra spoke first, outlining their strategy, emphasizing teamwork, and highlighting the human qualities that had made the success possible. Orales floated forward, his expression thoughtful. "Princess, your actions have prevented disaster." "I must admit the humans' methods are effective." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Humans have strengths that are not always obvious at first glance. We learn, adapt, and act when others hesitate. That is why I chose Jackson. And that is why I trust humans to stand with us in the future." The council murmured among themselves, some nodding in reluctant agreement, others still skeptical. But one thing was clear: the Empire could no longer dismiss humans. Their ingenuity, courage, and determination had proven their worth. That evening, Lyra and Jackson walked together through the palace gardens. The soft glow of the bioluminescent plants bathed them in light, and for a moment the weight of the Empire seemed to lift. "You did well," Lyra said softly. "Not just for the mission, but for everything. You've shown the Empire that humans can make a difference." Jackson looked at her, his eyes reflecting the stars above. "We did well together. That is what humans understand best: teamwork, trust, and perseverance. Alone, I am limited, but with you, with your knowledge and courage, we can accomplish the impossible." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. Humans were extraordinary, not because they were invincible, but because they dared to act when others hesitated. They faced danger with creativity and determination, rising to meet challenges that seemed insurmountable, and she was proud to stand beside one of them. The next day, the council convened again, this time in a mood of cautious respect. While some councilors still questioned the wisdom of Lyra's choice, others acknowledged the undeniable success of the recent mission. Humans, once dismissed as fragile and unpredictable, had earned their place in the conversation. Lyra addressed the assembly with calm authority. "The galaxy is vast, full of unknown challenges. To survive, we must embrace innovation, courage, and unity. Humans are not perfect, but they bring qualities that complement our own. Jackson Carter and the human team have proven that when we work together, we are stronger than any threat." A ripple of agreement passed through the council, and even the most stubborn skeptics could not deny the truth. The galaxy was changing, and humans were a part of that change. But beyond the council's chambers, the rival faction lurked, planning their next move. They had been humiliated, and they would not forget. The conflict was far from over, and Lyra and Jackson knew that future challenges would test their resolve, their intelligence, and their courage. For now, however, they allowed themselves a brief moment of triumph. Humans had proven themselves capable, Lyra had defended her choice, and the Empire had witnessed the power of courage, creativity, and determination. As night fell over the palace, Lyra and Jackson stood together, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was wide and full of danger, but also full of possibility. And they were ready to face it, together, as partners, as allies, and as a symbol of what humans could achieve. The test of ingenuity and courage had only just begun, and the next challenge loomed on the horizon. But for the first time, Lyra knew that with humans by her side, no obstacle was too great, and no enemy could withstand the power of determination, teamwork, and the extraordinary spirit of humanity. The galaxy had held its breath. After the failed sabotage attempt, the rival faction retreated to a hidden system far beyond the outer rim. They were furious, humiliated by the cleverness and bravery of Princess Lyra and the humans she had chosen to trust. Their plans were no longer simple. They were desperate, dangerous, and unpredictable. Lyra and Jackson spent the next days preparing for what they both knew was inevitable. The rival faction would not stop. They would strike again, and this time they would aim for the heart of the Empire. Every council member, every citizen, and every fleet had been warned. Yet the question remained. Would the human ingenuity that had saved the navigation system once be enough to overcome an enemy now fully aware of their tactics? In the palace's strategy room, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Jackson leaned over the holographic map of the galaxy, tracing routes and plotting probable enemy movements. "They've learned from their last failure," he said. "Expect deception, traps, and misdirection. They will try to force us into predictable responses." Lyra studied the map, her finger hovering over key locations. "Then we must think 3 steps ahead. We cannot react, we must anticipate, and we must act first." The plan they devised was daring. Instead of waiting for the enemy to strike, Lyra and Jackson proposed a proactive mission. Using fast, lightly armed ships, they would intercept the rival faction at a strategic choke point near the Andara Nebula, a region of dense gas clouds that could hide their approach. The nebula was treacherous, with unpredictable gravitational currents and electrical storms that could destroy unprepared ships, but it also offered the perfect opportunity for surprise. The team assembled quickly, bringing together humans and Zelleran allies. Engineers, tacticians, and pilots worked side by side, each contributing unique skills. Jackson briefed them in simple but precise terms, emphasizing creativity, flexibility, and the importance of teamwork. "Remember," he said, "the enemy expects us to follow their rules. We don't. We improvise, we adapt, and we use every advantage we have. And we watch out for each other. That's how humans survive." Lyra watched him, admiration swelling in her chest. Humans were remarkable in how they approached challenges, turning obstacles into opportunities. She had learned from him, from their experiences together, that courage alone was not enough. Wisdom, adaptability, and trust were equally vital. The fleet departed the palace in the early hours, moving toward the Andara Nebula. The journey was tense but uneventful, giving the team a chance to finalize preparations. Lyra and Jackson spent time reviewing contingencies, discussing tactics, and encouraging their allies. The humans, calm under pressure, inspired confidence. The Zelleran fleet had rarely seen such composure in the face of impending danger. As they neared the nebula, sensors picked up the rival faction's fleet approaching from the opposite side. The enemy ships were larger, heavily armed, and numerous. Conventional wisdom would have suggested retreat, but Lyra and Jackson knew that hesitation would be fatal. Instead, they relied on human ingenuity and strategy. Jackson outlined the plan. "We'll use the nebula's natural obstacles. Electrical storms will mask our movements, gravitational currents will confuse their navigation, and the gas clouds will block their sensors. We strike in small groups, divide their attention, and hit their critical points." Lyra nodded. "And we will lead from the front. Humans do not hide from danger. They face it, using their minds and courage to prevail." The fleet entered the nebula, navigating through swirling clouds of gas and unpredictable energy currents. Visibility was low, sensors were unreliable, and every move required careful calculation. Yet the humans and their allies pressed forward, relying on ingenuity, intuition, and precise coordination. The rival faction was caught off guard. They had expected a direct approach, a predictable attack. Instead, Lyra and Jackson's fleet appeared seemingly from nowhere, striking from multiple directions simultaneously. Small human-led teams infiltrated key ships, sabotaging weapon systems and disabling communications. Larger ships engaged in careful maneuvers, avoiding unnecessary risk while creating chaos within the enemy ranks. Lyra commanded one of the leading ships, her eyes scanning the viewscreen as explosions and energy bursts lit the nebula. Jackson guided the human teams with calm precision, anticipating enemy reactions and directing them toward weak points. Every success reinforced what she already knew. Humans were extraordinary when trusted, respected, and given responsibility. At one critical moment, an enemy flagship broke formation and attempted to flank Lyra's ship. The maneuver was bold, threatening to disrupt the battle. Jackson quickly devised a counter-strategy, directing a small human team to disable the flagship's propulsion system while Lyra led a daring interception maneuver. The plan worked perfectly. The flagship was immobilized, and the enemy fleet's morale began to falter. The tide of the battle shifted. The rival factions' coordinated attacks fell apart as Lyra and Jackson's fleet exploited confusion and disarray. Each human-led operation combined careful planning with adaptability, turning potential disaster into decisive advantage. The enemy could not anticipate their unpredictable strategies, nor could they counter the ingenuity and teamwork of the humans who had once been dismissed as fragile outsiders. Finally, Lyra led the charge toward the central command ship of the rival faction. It was heavily fortified, the last stronghold of the enemy fleet. But Lyra and Jackson were undeterred. Using a combination of stealth maneuvers, human creativity, and precise coordination, they infiltrated the ship, disabling critical systems and forcing the enemy to surrender. With the rival fleet defeated, the nebula fell quiet. Energy readings stabilized, and the storm of battle gave way to a calm that was almost surreal. Lyra and Jackson stood together on the bridge of their ship, looking out at the remnants of the enemy fleet scattered among the clouds. "You did it," Lyra said softly. "We did it." Jackson shook his head, a modest smile on his face. "Not me alone. Humans are strong, yes, but it's the combination of skill, trust, and teamwork that made this possible. And you led with courage, wisdom, and vision. You inspired everyone to do their best." Lyra felt a warmth of pride and relief. Humans had proven themselves, not just to her, but to the Empire, to the Council, and to every witness of the battle. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, not because of brute force, but because of intelligence, creativity, and courage. When they returned to the Imperial capital, the reception was unlike anything Lyra had ever experienced. Citizens cheered, banners flew, and the Council convened to formally acknowledge the success of the human-led mission. Even those who had doubted Lyra's choice could not deny the evidence of human capability. Orales approached Lyra and Jackson, his luminous form radiating approval. "Princess, Ambassador Carter, you have done what many thought impossible. You have defended the Empire, saved countless lives, and shown the Council that humans are a force to be respected. Your leadership and bravery are an example to us all." Lyra smiled, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift. "We did this together. Humans and Zellarans working as equals, combining our strengths, learning from each other. That is the future we must embrace." The Council formally recognized Jackson and the human team for their extraordinary contribution. Diplomatic protocols were updated to include humans in strategic planning, and citizens began to view humans with newfound respect and admiration. Lyra had not only defended her choice, but she had also changed the perception of an entire species within the Empire. In the quiet moments that followed the celebrations, Lyra and Jackson walked through the palace gardens, hand in hand. The stars above reflected in their eyes, and for a moment the universe seemed infinite and full of possibility. "We've proven something important," Lyra said. "Not just to the Council, not just to the Empire, but to everyone. Humans are capable of greatness." Jackson nodded. "And you've shown that courage, vision, and trust can change the course of the galaxy. Together, there's nothing we can't face." Lyra leaned against him, feeling the strength and determination that humans carried within them. They were ordinary in many ways, but extraordinary in spirit. capable of rising to challenges that no one else could imagine. That was the essence of humanity, and that was why she had chosen him. The galaxy was still vast, still full of unknown dangers and opportunities. But for the first time, Lyra felt certain that the future was bright. With humans as allies, the Empire could face anything, adapt, and thrive. They had not only survived, they had triumphed, and they had done so by embracing the best qualities of humanity: creativity, courage, resilience, and unwavering determination. As they looked out over the Imperial city, Lyra and Jackson knew that their journey was far from over. Challenges would come, and enemies would rise again. But they had learned something vital. Together, humans and Zellarans could achieve greatness, surpass expectations, and change the galaxy forever. For Lyra, the choice she had made, defying tradition for the human she had chosen, had proven not just personal love but universal truth. Courage, intelligence, and morality could overcome fear, prejudice, and impossible odds. And for Jackson, standing beside her, it was a confirmation that humanity's potential was limitless when guided by wisdom, trust, and heart. The stars stretched infinitely before them, a reminder that the galaxy was wide, mysterious, and full of adventure. And as Lyra and Jackson faced that vast expanse together, they knew one thing with certainty: humans were not just capable, they were extraordinary. The Empire would never be the same. The princess defied the galaxy, for the human she chose.